Welcome into our nation's capital. It's Inauguration Day +1 now here in Washington, D.C. I'm Jill Savage, of course, alongside me, Matthew Peterson and Chris Bedford. And when we're steps away from the Capitol building, we get some special guests to join us. And that today is Senator Jim Banks. So thanks so much for joining us. First of all, Jim, I really want to just ask you, what are some of the changes that you've seen in this city over the last couple of days?
Well, it's such a night and day difference. Yesterday was a great day, one of the greatest days in American history. And to be in the rotunda, to be a part of that, such a surreal moment, steps away from President Trump, a great speech. And then he left there and immediately began to do what he told us he was going to do. Well over 100 executive orders that immediately took effect, from reinstituting the effective Trump border policies to one of my favorites, requiring new federal buildings that are built around the country to use classical architecture, which fits right into this great idea that America is great and we should forecast that to the rest of the world in our buildings, to executive orders on getting rid of the electric vehicle mandates to save American automobile jobs. By the way, I'm a son of a factory worker who made axles all of his life, so those American-made jobs are important to the people where I come from. He's off to a great start. The pardons for the Jan 6 protesters, many of them were locked away for 2 years and never even charged with anything. And he followed through on those commitments that he made to the American people that gave him that big election win on Election Day, and he followed through on it. But this is not even 24 hours.
Yes.
I mean, we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot more to come. I've been calling this is the shock and awe moment. The first 100 days are going to be full of big wins by President Trump through executive order. And if Congress gets its act together and follows through on what we're supposed to do, we can cement all of these big wins for a long time to come.
Can we just zoom in real quick on the January 6 pardons? Because I feel like this is really important for reasons that I've heard people from Jason Whitlock, who's not a political guy at all. He just voted for the first time this year for Donald Trump. To many people who are more seasoned veterans of the political world. There's something about that goes to the heart of a false narrative that's been dominating the media for the last 4 years, plus a matter of justice that I feel like is really important. And I know you've been brave on this issue for a while. Can you say more what you think about this?
Well, remember, I was supposed to be the Republican ranking member of the sham Jan 6 committee, and Nancy Pelosi blocked me and Jim Jordan, and it all turned into the Liz Cheney crying Adam Kinzinger show on the so-called Republicans that they let be on the committee. But the reason that Jim Jordan and I were blocked from being on that committee is because we wanted to tell the truth. We wanted to show the American people what really happened that day, and that a lot of these people were wrongly locked up behind bars and mistreated. And to your point, now when President Trump signed that pardon yesterday, they were immediately letting these people go free from jail, and they're going to go home and they're going to tell their real story. They're going to talk about what happened to them. January 6th was over 4 years ago, and many of these people were locked away for years, never charged. Some of them were, one of the first people charged after January 6th, convicted, was a grandma from Indiana. And, these people were wrongly accused. They were locked up for it. I just got chased down the hallway by an NBC reporter, a CBS reporter, I can't tell the difference. And he was asking me, put the microphone in my face, and can you respond to President Trump pardoning the January 6 people? And it made me angry because why aren't they talking about Joe Biden pardoning his family, the most corrupt family ever to live in the White House? Joe Biden on his way out the door pardoned a guy who killed 2 FBI agents. Yeah. They're not, the media isn't even talking about that. They want to continue to demagogue these people who were there on January 6th to support President Trump and support our country. Many of them got swept up into something that they weren't a part of, and they were wrongly locked up for it. And the big difference between the two is Joe Biden told us that he wouldn't pardon his family. Donald Trump on the campaign trail for 2 years told us when he was running for president, I will pardon the January 6th protesters who have been wrongly locked up. and he followed through on that yesterday. And I think that's a very important moment for him.
You've been a vocal proponent of beauty and class, civic architecture for years now. And what's interesting about this Make America Beautiful Again Act that the president brought back is it never got any time to really breathe when he first gave it. It was at the end of the administration, quickly repealed by the Joe Biden. But now it seems like there's a couple of different secretaries that are talking about it. You hear a potential Secretary of Transportation talking about the importance of that in infrastructure. But over the last 4 years, the Department of Defense has led a lot of different purges of history and architecture, whether it's at West Point or whether it's the Reconciliation Memorial in Arlington Cemetery. Did that come up in your conversations with Pete Hegseth about what he would do in defense?
Yeah, he's a big believer in all of this. We've talked about it. I mean, projecting American strength and the greatness of America should be projected in our buildings and in our infrastructure. So Pete and I have had many conversations, but he fully believes that too. It's projecting to the rest of the world that we're great, and that's what we should be doing. And President Trump signed the executive order late in his first term. And Biden immediately stripped it away. I introduced the first bill in Congress that would cement that executive order. Now we're going to do the same thing in the coming days to cement this new executive order to make it the law of the land, so that the next president, God forbid, if that was ever a Democrat that would come back to the White House that would do away with it, would succumb to the pressures of special interest groups who profit from the ugly buildings that get built around the country that last for 30 or 40 years instead of for hundreds of years.
And they're redone all the time.
Yeah,
Is there any talk about restoring some of the things that have been taken away, like the memorial in Arlington Cemetery or other things that Department
I think that's
of Defense
very much on
away?
President Trump's mind, and I know that he cares about that. He's going to engage on that subject, and I think it's a really interesting subject, something that our community should be talking more about, how we support
Absolutely.
Public policy measures like that.
I love that that's one of the priorities right now, because it is something that is important. But we see Donald Trump and we see the mandate that comes along with this. This big election comes with this big victory and a lot of promises. So what is the Senate going to prioritize now in the first 100 days?
Well, we just passed the Laken Riley Act, which says that if you're here illegally and you've committed a violent crime or committed a theft, there were amendments added to the bill later on that if you've assaulted a law enforcement officer, then you are locked up, not let go. I mean, really, it's an absurd notion to think about that we would allow violent criminals come into our country over a wide open border. We know who they are, we know where they are, and under Joe Biden and the Democrats, they were just set free. And the Laken Riley Act says that that's not going to happen anymore. So we passed it out of the Senate. I expect the House to quickly pass it too. And I expect it'll be the first bill from Congress that goes to President Trump's desk that he will sign into law.
One of the breaks you still see amongst Republicans in the Senate versus Republicans and maybe in the White House is you've got a more neoconservative attitude in the Senate. I know that this is going to come before Senate Intelligence Committee, but can you give us any kind of insider knowledge on Republican feelings toward Tulsi Gabbard, who has questioned a lot of those pieties in a way that you haven't seen from some of the other nominees?
Yeah, I had a great meeting with Tulsi Gabbard. I served with her in the House, and she came to my office to talk about her nomination. And by the way, I spent 8 years in the House. I'm 2 weeks on the job in the Senate. People say, what's the big difference? The big difference is the nomination process. So the nominees come to my office, and you immediately, the nature of that means that senators have more influence because you influence the nominees, and you don't just ask them tough questions, but you ask them to make commitments. And they didn't have to ask Tulsi that because Tulsi is very focused on making the intelligence community more transparent and then holding people accountable for the bad things that they've done, like the intelligence community that pushed the false narrative about Hunter Biden and the laptop, and they all 50-something of them that have security clearance that President Trump is taking away from them. By the way, this is another great
Hate to see
moment.
it.
But when Tulsi's the head of the intelligence community, she's going to hold these people accountable, but she's also going to make important things transparent that have been hidden from the American people. And I'm talking about everything from the JFK files to what happened on January 6th to a lot of other important things that have happened in recent years, and that's what she and I talked about. So she goes before the Intelligence Committee, And you're asking a good question because I feel pretty good about all of these nominations, from Pete Hegseth to I'm on the Veterans Committee. We just heard from Doug Collins. He's gonna skate through. Marco Rubio's the first nominee that was passed last night on day one, 99-0. So there are a lot of great nominees I think are going to be move forward very quickly. But Tulsi, I think, is the one that might be the biggest challenge. But it's really important that we all support her.
Can you talk a little bit about the Senate beyond the nominations in general? Right now, I think you see increasingly a base, or it's more than just a Republican base. Really, it's the entire MAGA coalition, right? Who isn't happy, as Chris is alluding to, with leadership in the Senate. And this has been ongoing. It's sort of come to a head a few times. And when I look at this, I see something that people in Washington would say was, it'd be almost impossible a few years ago that you'd ever change this. But there's certainly a move, a move in a different direction. And a lot of people who want to move in that direction, who are your colleagues. So how do you think about the scene?
I'm optimistic. I mean, I got here 8 years ago when President Trump was elected the first time, and Paul Ryan was the Speaker of the House. And even before President Trump was inaugurated in January of 2017, Paul Ryan was talking about being the guardrails to protect our democracy from incoming President Trump. So, and today you have Mike Johnson, he's not Paul Ryan. He's very pro-Trump. You have John Thune, the new Senate leader who replaced Mitch McConnell, who had a similar mindset about Trump back then and all the way along as what Paul Ryan did. But it's not just about leadership, and I think this is important. We often talk about leadership and we complain about them, but it's the rank and file membership of the House and the Senate Republican caucuses that are very different than they were 8 years ago. And the biggest reason why is because Donald Trump got involved over 8 years. He got involved in my primary and cleared the field in Indiana, and I'm a senator today because of it. But he got involved in primaries for all the way up and down the House races, Senate races. He took on incumbents, and he forced a lot of old school Republicans to retire early. And a lot of them did that over the last 8 years. So you look at the Eric Schmitz and the from Missouri and Bernie Moreno in Ohio, a lot of great new conservative, new right members in the Senate, and you don't have the Pat Toomeys and the Mitt Romneys. They're not in the Senate anymore, so it's very different. And this gives me a lot of optimism about what we can do. The thing that we have to do is pass the reconciliation bill, and what that does is it's a legislative maneuver to get us out from under the 60-vote rule to pass something with 50 votes with a tie-breaking vote from the VP that would make a lot of the Trump policies permanent, from securing the border to making the tax cuts on working class families and small businesses permanent. This was a big mistake that Paul Ryan and Republicans made. I was there for it in 2017, the focusing more on the corporate tax rates and making them permanent, but not the individual rates on working families. So now we have an opportunity with reconciliation to fix that and make those tax cuts permanent on the people who matter most, and that's what we're going to do.
There's so much difference that you can see publicly and openly on the television between the first inauguration of Trump and the second one that we just went through. But you had an insider seat to both. So what was a big difference that you noticed last night from 8 years ago?
Well, if you remember 8 years ago, we all had raincoats. Remember there was the meme of Bernie Sanders with the
gloves,
the gloves, and George W. Bush. 8 years, he became a meme in both of them because of the I think he had an umbrella in the first one, and yesterday he was enjoying himself. But the location obviously historic to do it in the Rotunda. Last time it happened was Reagan in '85. But I just sensed that with Joe and Jill Biden and Kamala up in the front row, and they knew what they did. They knew what they got away with. He had just left the White House, where he signed pardons for his family members, for other corrupt people, and for the audacity for them to get up and stand on that stage. But the best part about it was President Trump didn't hold back. He talked about how bad the last 4 years have done, the damage they've done to this country, and how he's going to make America great again. And I thought I've heard him give great speeches, the Mount Rushmore speech and other speeches that he's given that he gave in the first term. This was the greatest speech I've heard him give, and everyone there, even I sat next to a couple of Democrat senators. They feel it too. They know that they know their party has been broken. The resistance has been broken. From the big tech execs who were on the stage to the media outlets to Democrats in the Congress, they know that they are on the losing side, the wrong side of history. The voters spoke loud and clear, and President Trump represents a movement that doesn't end with President Trump in 4 years. It's a movement that's going to be around for a long time to come.
Yeah, we're big football fans over here. So it's like we won the first day, we're still winning the second day, and we're not tired of winning yet.
at all.
Senator Jim Banks, thanks so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us.